Thank you so much, Tabitha, and welcome everyone to Love It, Protect It, How Stories and Tech Will Help Us Cherish Our Planet. My name is Nadinè, your moderator for this session. At MIT Senseable City Lab and UCD Spatial Dynamics Lab, I work at the intersection of cities, ecology, and technology to restore and enhance nature's ability to mitigate and adapt to climate change, something we like to call the Internet of Nature. And in this session, we're going to dive into exactly that, into the power of storytelling and how technology can amplify those stories to protect and nurture our planet's health. As Ken Burnett said, storytelling really can change the world. Stories engage us easily, draw us in naturally, excite our curiosity, pique our interest, and lead us to the satisfying conclusion that we can do something now to make a difference. Humans really are hardwired for stories. And tonight, we're going to hear the stories of 4 fabulous speakers, followed by a panel discussion. First up, we have Czar Raskin. Trained as a mathematician and dark matter physicist, Czar is the co-founder of the Earth Species Project, a nonprofit organization dedicated to using breaking advances in AI to decode animal language, building empathy for the species cohabiting our planet to promote their conservation and our well-being. Czar is also the co-founder of the Center of Humane Technology and the co-host of the popular podcast, Your Undivided Attention. He's a jack of many trades, something Fast Company recognized when they named Czar their master of design. Over you, Czar.
Thank you so very much, Nadine. So the story I think I want to tell this time starts in October 2017, when there were 2 sort of breakthrough papers that came out one after each other, October 30th and 31st, that did something really surprising. It showed for the first time that you could translate between two languages, even if you didn't understand either language, if you had no dictionary and no examples of translation. It's sort of the universal translator, at least for human languages. And the way it works is fascinating. You ask the computer, AI, deep learning, to build a shape that represents a language. And imagine sort of a galaxy. Actually, I can show you guys here what this sort of looks like. This is actually English. This is the top 10,000 most spoken words. Every point is a word, and the way they are positioned is relational. So if they mean similar things, they're near each other. And every analogy has a geometric form. It's a longer thing to go into. It's fascinating. These things are called word embeddings. And the breakthrough is this. If you build the shape for English and you build the shape for Japanese, you can translate between the two simply by rotating their shapes until they match each other. Right? The point, which is dog, ends up being in the same place in English and Japanese because dog has the similar kinds of relationships to man and to cars and to buildings. This is sort of the analogic structure. So the deeply surprising thing is that this doesn't just work for English and Japanese, but for Esperanto, for Finnish, for Japanese, for Turkish. Most human languages seem to share one kind of universal meaning shape, and you can translate between the two by matching their shapes together. And this, I think we just need to pause for a second on how profound it is. Because a priori, you'd think the differences in our culture, in our history, in our context are so different, you couldn't possibly just translate by matching shape to shape. And yet that seems to be the case. And I think this is so beautiful in a time in such division that there is a kind of hidden and universal shape that describes each of our perspectives on the world. And if you think about it, each one of these shapes sort of encodes a worldview of a culture. It is a viewpoint, it is a perspective, gives the ability to translate between them. And that really is the basis of empathy. So on that, I think there's an important point here. And that is, on this panel that we're all speaking on, we don't have a diversity of perspectives. We're all white and looking through the the list of planet speakers, there's only one Black person on the panel. And I do not think we can possibly hope for an interdependent future in which life is possible without it being created and constructed and dreamed by all of us. It's something I hope we can do better on in the future. Because here is something I think is true in our lives and societally. Changes in perspective can change everything. This is the power of story. Dramatic shifts happen when we see ourselves through someone else's eyes, when we can meet ourselves in a new way. And I want to tell two fast stories of the sort of the why of what we're trying to do at Earth Species and what we're really inspired by. And the first is the Songs of the Humpback Whale. 1968, Roger Payne releases, I actually have it just sitting up there, this album. He was working with Katie Payne, his partner at the time, which are the Songs of the Humpback Whale. And it was the first time we as Western society heard another species make art. We could hear their voices, and it was so profound that Star Trek IV, Go Back in Time, Save the Whales, comes out of it. Carl Sagan puts it as the very first track after Human Greetings on Voyager 1, not to represent humanity, but all of Earth. And it changes political will and creates the Save the Whale movement and changes policy, which is why we still have whales today. Another example of this is during the years when there was a human being on Moon, when all of humanity was being dosed with the overview effect, can see ourselves from the outside, that we're just a tiny little rock floating in space alone. It was during those years that NOAA came into existence, the EPA came into existence, and the environmental protection movement got started. Shifts in perspective really can change everything. And the new tools that we have, like deep learning, they're like the microscope times the telescope of our time. They let us see at both greater granularity than we've ever seen before and much greater scope. And just like with the telescope, which taught us that humans, or that the Earth was not at the center of the universe, I think the big opportunity in front of us is going to seeing that humanity is not at the center of the universe. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Asa. Really looking forward to touching upon the very important piece of empathy as we get on in our panel discussion later on. Our next speaker is Loren Bauer. Maren is the co-founder and CEO of Katapult Ocean, a leading force in building the blue economy globally. Katapult Ocean has invested in 22 impact-driven ocean startups from 14 different countries. She is part of the advisory network to the high-level panel for sustainable ocean economy, and she is passionate about supporting startups that make a positive impact on our oceans, something she has spoken on at the Economist World Ocean Conference and the World Economic Forum. Please put your hands together for Maren.
Thank you, Nadine. It's good to be here. Just a small correction here. I'm not currently the CEO of Katapult Ocean, just stepped aside, but still co-founder and owner there. And first of all, a very happy World Ocean Day to everyone today. Just gonna share my screen. Let me. Good. Okay. Love it, protect it, which is the topic for this session. It's great. My focus here will be on the ocean, which constitutes 70% of our planet. We hear a lot about the challenges in the ocean. I will not touch upon those directly today. What's really important for us to know is that the healthy ocean can help us address the most pressing challenges we have today. If we do it the right way, the ocean can contribute to feeding a growing population, help us feed a 10 billion planet over the next decade. if we do it in a sustainable and new way, leveraging new technology. Also, the ocean can provide us with solutions to the climate change challenges. A blue paper by the high-level panel estimated that the ocean can contribute to 21% of the CO2 reductions needed to reach the 1.5% target in the Paris Agreement. So the ocean is really connected with biodiversity and also with the climate. With climate change. The ocean industries can also contribute to creating decent jobs and also develop a better equitable social model. And this is also why the ocean is a great case for impact investing, which is to invest capital with the intention to achieve financial value and social and environmental value. And that is what I've been doing with Katapult Ocean, to invest in early stage impact-driven ocean startups all over the world. And the timing is right. There is increasing focus on all of this, grants and philanthropic money going into the ocean space. Also, private capital is mobilizing. But most importantly, we see really an increase in the number of startups and companies focused on this, a growing ecosystem to support new technologies. And more than, we in Katapult Ocean, we mapped more than 1,300 early stage impact ocean startups from all over the world. And I guess we're just scratching the surface here. There's a lot of exciting things happening. And with Katapult Ocean, our mission has been to invest in and support those early stage startups. And one part of that is also to tell the stories around this, both the stories of why the ocean is a very interesting space to invest in, and also to tell the stories of these brave, innovative people who dedicate their lives to make a positive impact on the ocean. So now I would like to share with you some of those stories. Illegal fishing is a major problem globally. It is estimated to cost $23 billion annually, at least, and it impacts the more vulnerable parts of the world. The good news is that there exists a lot of technologies that can help us combat this. Atlas Space is one company that has developed artificially intelligent drones to autonomously identify illegal fishing vessels that can then make sure that the Coast Guards can take action. In addition, when we talk about the blue economy, the growing blue economy, it also involves a lot of constructions in the ocean, and that can harm the ocean and the ecosystems there as well. And we know also that 90% of coral reefs are at danger of dying. Arc Marine is a company that has developed reef cubes. These are building blocks that will act as reefs, they're artificial reefs, and by using that instead of concrete and plastic and other bad substances while building in the ocean, you can actually enhance marine ecosystems instead of harming them. And it's not only food we can attract from the ocean. It is also other things like algae that can be used as dyes for the textile industry or to create fibers. Algalite is a company that's working on this, and their textiles and their dyes has a significantly lower CO2 footprint at the same time as being friendly for the ocean. And last example here is Brim Explorer. This is a hybrid ship for tourists, taking tourists out to enjoy the ocean completely electric. Their focus has been on making people fall in love with the ocean and to make people tell stories about the ocean when they come back to where they're from. And they have microphones underneath the boat to bring in the sounds of the ocean, of the whales, and they have 100% focus on making everything, the footprint here, sustainable, and the footprint even positive on tourism, which is not normal today. So my encouragement to all of you is to keep on telling stories. Of course, stories about the situation and the challenges, but even more powerful is to tell the stories of all the positive things happening out there and all the great opportunities in the ocean space. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maren. It's so great to see the focus on positive stories. Next up, our third speaker, we have Chris Gorell Barnes. Chris helps brands to be a force for good. He is a high-profile entrepreneur. He's at the forefront of new media and technology. And one of Chris's greatest passions is ocean and marine conservation. Very fitting for World Ocean Day. And he was the executive producer of a first-of-its-kind documentary, The End of the Line. Following its success, he co-founded the Blue Marine Foundation, a new kind of charity dedicated to creating marine reserves and establishing sustainable models of fishing. Since its inception, Blue has achieved a huge amount of impactful ocean conservation, including catalyzing the creation of the world's largest marine reserve, and has protected nearly 5 square kilometers of ocean. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Thank you for the introduction. Just 5 million square kilometers, not 5 square kilometers. I don't think that would be quite an achievement if we'd only done 5.
Thank you for that important correction.
So following on, you're going to get a double ocean whammy here. Happy World Ocean Day to everybody. We've heard the importance of the ocean, and one of the biggest issues with the ocean and why storytelling is so fundamental to helping protect the ocean is that the ocean is out of sight, out of mind. I'd imagine most of you are at home on your computers, far away from the ocean. Those of you who are near the ocean, you're extremely lucky, but it tends to be out of sight, out of mind, which is so strange considering that 71% of the planet is ocean. We do in fact live on planet ocean. It is a blue planet, and the ocean is so important to life on Earth that every second breath anybody takes in the world, the oxygen, half of the oxygen from that comes from the ocean, and the ocean also absorbs half the carbon we produce. So it literally is the lungs and the heart of our planet, and if the ocean dies, we die. So in my opinion, the single most important thing we need to do to protect life on Earth is to have and to ensure we have a healthy marine ecosystem, because without a healthy functioning ocean, we cannot have a healthy planet. So it absolutely needs to be the thing that we focus on. And 2020, this is the decade of delivery according to the United Nations Global Goals, and this is the Ocean Super Year. We were all supposed to be in Lisbon last week for the World Ocean Summit, which is being held virtually at the moment. So very, very important that we remember the ocean. My story and my journey has been very much about storytelling and using technology. And, you know, we started out by making a movie 11 years ago called The End of the Line, which really was a fantastic way of telling the story of the devastating effects of overfishing and how much we are abusing and damaging our beautiful ocean resources. The documentary was incredibly successful. It was up there with Al Gore's An Inconvenient Truth in terms of a film that had really had such a significant impact on society, on government, on businesses to change behavior. And it really did change understanding of how bad overfishing is, but also drove really positive change in terms of government changing laws, in terms of retailers changing their supply chain, and really drove a huge uptick in the understanding of the importance of sustainable fishing. But the film was just the beginning of our journey and our story. And we launched the Blue Marine Foundation. It's the logo I'm wearing today on World Ocean Day. And that was 10 years ago. We launched the Blue Marine Foundation, which has had an amazing journey of using storytelling all the time to help drive awareness of the ocean, whether that is the fact that one of our co-founders is a brilliant journalist. So we've been able to really use great editorial in papers and used great writing to drive awareness of it. But Blue has been focused on creating sustainable fishing models and creating marine protected areas. And fast forwarding 10 years since its inception, we've been going 10 years now. We're now the largest and the most impactful marine NGO in Europe, Middle East, and Africa. As we heard, we've helped facilitate, fund, and protect 5 million square kilometers of ocean, so that's nearly the size of continental Europe. We've launched projects all over the world, new models of sustainable fishing, and used great technologies. We developed a really smart device last year, which was to deal with one of the ocean's biggest issues, which is ghost gear. So a lot of fish nets get lost at sea. Either fishermen just discard them, they get caught on coral, they fall to the bottom of the ocean, and they trap and kill so many mammals. And they also produce something about like 20% or 25% of the marine plastics in the ocean. So if we could get all of those nets out of the ocean, it would be incredible win for both not killing ocean mammals, but also reducing the plastic in the ocean. So we created an amazing technology called Safe Gear, which was a tracking device that fishermen can put in their nets, so that if they do get lost, they can track them, a bit like a black box when an airplane crashes, or environmentalists or indeed coast guards could pick them up. And that's a really great example of how we'd use technology. And I wanted to share another example of how we use technology to really drive conservation. Was we worked very closely with the BBC when Blue Planet 2 was launched, and this amazing content that I hope all of you have seen. It was, you know, so successful it even nearly broke the internet in China. But when Blue Planet 2 went out, we had the script, and we had the content, and we were able to slipstream the broadcast of that and create amazing social media content and atomized stories of this brilliant show to reach a social media audience, to then drive audiences to a technology, an app and a website that we created, which enabled the viewer to put the postcode of their MP in, to tell the MP that they should back a campaign called Back the Blue Belt. And we managed to reach, as a charity, 21 million people, and we managed to get one MP to be tweeted every 2 seconds. And it led to 285 MPs. Those of you in the UK will know that's quite a lot of MPs, but the largest amount of MPs ever signing up to an environmental promise, which was to back the Blue Belt. And that led to the successful formation of the UK government committing to protecting all of the British overseas territories, which is one of the largest environmental promises any government's ever done. So that was a really great example of using storytelling, reaching a great audience, and then using a little bit of technology to actually enable somebody that had heard or watched the story to be able to take an action which would then lead to conservation. And that's been a great success, that Blue has now launched what we call Blue Media, which is a specific unit of a team of experts that are there within the charity and the organization to create stories, to create editorial video copy about particular campaigns. And it's very, very focused on creating stories that are actually going to create an absolute conservation win. And there's two things that we've done really recently. One is we did a campaign for the Maldives. What you won't know is how important seagrass is to marine conservation. It's very important in terms of the sequestration of carbon dioxide, but it also protects juvenile fish. And the Maldives weren't protecting a lot of seagrass, so we wanted to create a media campaign to protect seagrass, and we managed to get 1 million hectares of seagrass protected by creating great image, great videos, and distributing it to the right audiences. And we also managed to use the media unit to ban pulse fishing, which is using electricity to kill fish, which is a terrible practice. So again, that was using really intelligent content, intelligent use of storytelling videos to be distributed into the right audiences, but enabling action to be taken. So that's been it's been great for a charity, and since that, the latest thing that we've launched coming on is an impact fund, so Ocean 14 Capital, which is focusing on investing in impact investing in the ocean. So it's a private equity fund that is looking at technologies that will help restore and protect the ocean, and absolutely focused on Sustainable Development Goal 14. And we have a clear target of 10 years now until 2030, where we must all do everything we can with philanthropic money, with investment capital to use our skills to ensure that we have a healthy ocean by 2030. So thanks for listening, and happy World Ocean Day.
That's incredible, Chris. Congratulations on all you've accomplished so far. I think it's absolutely amazing to be able to celebrate World Ocean Day with all of these real impactful stories. What's next in terms of new media campaigns?
There's a huge amount of new campaigns happening. We just created a campaign for the high seas. So the ocean that covers 71% of the planet, about 50% of that is the high seas, which is sort of huge, vast area of ocean that is actually doesn't belong to anybody. It's not in any jurisdiction. So every country has an area of ocean around it, about 200-mile radius, which they own. But the high seas, which I think is about 40% of the world ocean, is basically free for all. And if we can't protect the high seas, we've got very little chance of being able to protect the ocean. So we created a campaign with the High Seas Alliance to and the aim here, which is going quite well, is to drive a new treaty for the high seas. So to get all the countries in the world to sign up to a treaty to ensure the protection of the high seas.
That's incredible. Thank you for all that you do. Excited to get back to it in the panel discussion.
Thank you.
And now for our final speaker of tonight, last but certainly not least, we have Sander van der Vegte. Sander is an 18-year digital production veteran, and he definitely knows the possibilities of new tech like no other. He is the head of MediaMonks Lab. As the head, Sander advises major brands, IPs, and agencies on the production of new digital builds. He has led the production of award-winning projects for clients like Activision, Google, Lego, Old Spice, and many, many more. Over to you, Sander.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the introduction. Much appreciated. Happy Ocean Day, everyone. My story is actually about the forest, but I just became a father of a boy I named Marinus, so I guess that's fitting. As I mentioned, I work for a production company called MediaMonks. Here I head up MediaMonks Labs, which is our internal research and development department. And what we do is test out emerging tech and keep ourselves and our clients up to date on what's possible in the field of emerging tech, which is a nice segue into the topic of today. As some time ago, we actually managed to change the physical world a little bit with the help of new tech. When I heard about the theme of this hour, how stories and tech will help us cherish our planet, I was reminded about a project we did roughly 3 years ago called Into the Wild. I'll explain more in a minute, but in short, it's the biggest mixed reality experience to date, transforming about 10,000 square feet inside a museum into a rainforest. It's a very tangible example of how story and tech can impact the real world. The project started when several different companies and NPOs reached out to us. We have the Art Science Museum in Singapore, WWF, and Google and Lenovo. These companies together wondered if it's possible to create an awareness program that tells the troubling story of what's happening in the Sumatra rainforest. If you have ever been in Singapore in the dry season, between February and April, chances are you've noticed an intermittent burning smell. This burning smell is coming from the Sumatra rainforest. You can see here how close the rainforest actually is to Singapore. The red circle contains a collection of different forest fires, and the yellow circle is Singapore. On certain days, there's a thick smog hanging in the streets, making it quite hard to breathe. What happens is farmers, they burn down the rainforest to make space for commercial crops like palm oil, and this deforestation has an enormous impact on endangered species. So we started looking into how to make people aware about this incredible reality in a way that connects and sticks. The building of the Arts and Science Museum was a big inspiration. You can see on this slide how extraordinarily beautiful this building is. So we thought, wouldn't it be cool if we recreate the rainforest inside this lotus-shaped building? People can witness firsthand what's going on in Sumatra that way. Google, at the time, this was 3 years ago, was working on technology called Tango. It's the predecessor of what is now known as Android's native AR functionality called AR Core. And for those who don't know, AR is augmented reality. It allows you to superimpose digital imagery on top of the real world. I'm sure you've heard of Pokemon Go by now, or if you drive a fancy Mercedes, those arrows that enhance your navigation screen, that's AR. So Tango, being the predecessor of AR, they solved room recognition with a cool little trick. So next to their normal camera, it uses a separate depth camera in the back of the tablet, and it allows you to scan and record the room in 3D. You can walk around the museum and project the massive rainforest all over the museum floor. Lenovo was the first hardware manufacturer producing this device, and it was a perfect opportunity to combine all of it and bring the rainforest to the people. So the story that we are telling in Into the Wild is about a forest ranger walking in the rainforest in Sumatra. On his journey, different events a real ranger might come across is told through animation. You can see here an example of how you walk inside the museum while experiencing being the park ranger in this virtual forest. We have included all sorts of animals like tigers growling at you and pangolins scurrying away, and orangutans getting in close ranges of fires. Each animation would lead you further into the museum and therefore further into the rainforest. The experience hardly uses speaking words or voiceovers. You can set the speed of exploring yourself. We have designed the experience that the driving factor is done through visual storytelling. Designing the virtual space was quite a challenge. Our production office is in the Netherlands and the museum was in Singapore. And especially for a topic like this, traveling back and forth isn't quite sustainable. So we were in need of another solution. So what we did is rebuild the museum and put it in VR. So we actually created the mixed reality experience inside of VR, and it was surprisingly effective. Everything was witnessed from the Lenovo tablet inside the museum, leading you through the museum's different spaces. The user ends up in an exhibition space where a virtual seed can be planted. And this is the moment we ask the user to make a pledge in real life. The number of people pledging to plant a tree was quite overwhelming. So overwhelming, in fact, that we have continued the experience. It's still available. So we have reached incredible numbers that allowed us to rehabilitate the real rainforest through planting digital trees, and we are still doing it, actually. So you could say we're not only just augmenting reality, but improving reality. And all of this is done through emerging tech and good storytelling. Proper communication and information is needed to inform people about what's important. So we have the classic tool in the form of storytelling at our disposal that can be enhanced through all sorts of technology. I'm a firm believer that we are going to see an increase in this combination in the coming years, especially now that we have to rethink the ways we travel and connect. That's it for me. Thank you very much for your time and attention.
Thank you so much, Sander. It almost reminds me of what the future of zoos could look like as they turn into these areas of what conservation could look like without even having to go there. It's incredibly inspiring. How do you feel when it comes to the way you're leading the way, when it comes to exposing the possibilities of these new technologies? How can one prepare themselves for working with new and this really kind of emerging technology?
The thing with new technology is you don't quite know what's going to happen. So what we try to do is really find out the limitations of the tech before actually proposing something that we can do, which is a difficult thing, especially if you work for events like Christmas or the Super Bowl. but it's finding out the limitations that you can't answer by doing it, and when you are doing it, when you're executing new tech, you'll actually find out that you'll learn certain ways of using it that can be used in the experience itself. It sounds a bit theoretical, I know, but I think the good example of what it just showed is being able to use VR, for instance, to overcome distance, and using the depth camera to make sure that the museum is filled in a rainforest. The lotus shape, which are round-shaped walls, are actually quite difficult to track for a depth camera. So that's one of the things that you only notice if you start testing it inside a real museum. So you have to be adaptive.
Absolutely. I'm sensing perhaps there could be a collaboration between Aza's work and Sunder's work in terms of when it comes to visualizing a lot of the and decoding a lot of the animal communication and language. What do you think, Aza? Have you done any work in the past to kind of visualize this to raise awareness in the public on terms of what you're doing?
Yeah, well, we are at the very beginning of of our journey, right? It's sort of amazing that we can say, even with a straight face, that we are on the cusp of actually be able to understand what the other species of Earth are saying to each other, and maybe even about us. I think one of the roles that technology can play is, there are fundamental limits to what our brains can do. Chris and others were talking about this, is just when things are far away in time and space, we as human beings have a hard time grasping them. It's what makes climate change such a challenging problem, is that it feels distance in time and space. Technology can make things that are invisible, visceral, touch and felt sense, and that's how behavior changes.
And is it really possible to decode animal communication and language?
Interesting and great question. Here's just one really intriguing piece of research, and it comes from Diana Reese originally turned me on to it. It's an unpublished thesis from 1994. Diana was the woman who discovered that elephants are self-aware. They look in a mirror and recognize themselves, as are dolphins. Some very profound work. And it was this. The study was, give dolphins a command, which is innovate, do something you've never done before, which already is an incredible cognitive load to be able to both translate and then interpret. And so the dolphins can do it. So do something you've never done before, and they gave another command, together. So do something you've never done before, together. And the dolphins would go down, exchange some kind of sonic information, come out and do the same trick at the same time that they hadn't done before. And that's just so intriguing. And I think the more we've looked around, the more we've seen examples of this kind of thing. It's not that can we decode animal communication, discover animal language? That's inevitable. The question is, how quickly can we do it so that it can make the difference that it needs?
Absolutely. It reminds me a lot of certain research that I've touched upon a lot in my own work, which is how there are the fungal underground networks that connect trees to one another. And this, it was long ago known that trees, communicate with these fungal networks to trade and barter carbon and nutrients. But it was actually, just even 20, 30 years ago, found out that they're actually using these networks to communicate to one another, that trees are communicating. And I think that's done wonders in terms of forest conservation. So I'm really, really excited to see where this goes, so we can just apply that to conservation of all aspects of the earth. Maren, I want to ask you on this specifically, interesting World Ocean Day, as we're all celebrating together. It's an ocean day where, the Ocean Summit is being held virtually. Most of us are still in some form of lockdown or quarantine. What can one person do at home to make a difference on this World Ocean Day?
That's a big question. I mean, there's of course a lot of things you can do as a private person to choose to eat maybe less seafood, and the right seafood, and use less plastic, and use less or use products that are not harmful to the ocean. But I think also my perspective here, working closely with these type of startups is really for a lot of people out there who has a great network or maybe some capital to invest or great experience that you can contribute to these startups and founders to really do that. To, if you have the opportunity, be an angel investor into these startups. If you do not have the opportunity to do that, maybe you can be a mentor, maybe you can be a sparring partner or someone who can open doors. Think about how you can best support these innovators. I think that's really, really important. And that you can also do virtually by offering your assistance on calls and so on.
Absolutely. It's great that we're innovating in that way too. And a last question to wrap up before we go to the Q&A session between the speakers and our lovely audience. Chris, you were able to raise awareness on ocean health and ocean conservation by reaching people in their living rooms through a very powerful documentary. What did that experience teach you about what we can do collectively to ensure that we have healthy oceans?
I think it certainly showed me the power of storytelling and the power of documentaries. They're the most brilliant way of exposing issues, and I think that they've been very powerful in a lot of areas of the environment. We made The End of the Line. There's an amazing documentary called The Last Ocean that came out about Antarctica, which is fantastic, and we've seen a lot of great filmmaking. But I think the most important thing that we all need to focus our efforts on is to ensure that we have a protected ocean. We need to reach the target this year, 2020, where the aim was to get to 10% protected by 2020, to have 10% of the ocean protected. I think we'll get there. But then the next jump in the next 10 years is enormous. We need to protect 30% of the ocean by 2030. So there's a huge campaign called 30 by 30, which is taking stride, and I think we can do that. But we must ensure that we not only protect and have marine protected areas that cover 30% of the world's ocean, but that the rest of the ocean is sustainably managed. And that's back to my point earlier about the high seas. We need to ensure that the ocean is looked after for generations to come, and it isn't just a food source. It isn't just somewhere that you rape and pillage and take the fish out. It's actually the realization that this is, it is the life source of the planet. So 30% protected by 2030 of marine protected areas, not paper parks, and then the rest of the ocean needs to be sustainably managed.
Absolutely. Just because it's out of sight doesn't mean it can be out of mind.
Exactly.
I want to thank Asa, Maren, Sander, Chris. Thank you so much for speaking. Thank you so much for joining us this evening or this morning if you're in California like Asa. Really, really appreciate it. Onwards to you, Tabitha, and I look forward to continuing discussion in our moderated Q&A.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nadine.
Want access to more CogX videos? Subscribe now for free at cogx.co.